we on the way to unprecedented escalation in the Middle East? Is the United States planning a military takeover on Iranian soil? Now, according to reports in the United States, a rapid deployment of forces from the 82nd Airborne Division and the Marines to the Middle East is being considered as part of preparations for the possibility of military action in Iran, including, among other things, taking control of Karg Island. Less than a day after Trump promised to delay the strike on Iran, the explosion came, and Iranian energy facilities exploded under mysterious circumstances. On one hand, in the last few minutes, dramatic reports have reached us that Iran is mining the Straits of Hormuz, which suggests that the oil route is in danger. American intelligence estimates that Iran has placed naval mines in the Strait of Hormuz. But on the other hand, guys, Tehran trembled last night after a very massive operation by the Israeli Air Force. I can say that the Air Force delivered a heavy blow to Iran's ballistic missile launch array. That's what we know. And today, Iran appointed a replacement for the head of the National Security Council, Ali Larijani, who was eliminated in an Israeli strike. This is the most extreme of the extremists. The general who advocates the destruction of Israel will now manage Iran's security. The Gulf states are fed up with Iran. The battle over Hormuz is moving up a stage. Bahrain is demanding authorization to use force against Iran. And in addition, Saudi Arabia is on the verge of joining the war against Iran. Reports show that bin Salman is close to deciding whether to join or not. There was also a direct hit by an Iranian missile with a 100-kilogram warhead on a road in a small street in central Tel Aviv, causing enormous damage. At least 3 buildings were damaged, and cars went up in flames. Guys, I'm Mati Shoshani, and here on Boots on the Ground, we bring you the whole truth about what is happening in Israel and everything that is happening right now in our neighborhood, the Middle East. We're in the middle of day 25 of the epic Fury War, or by its Israeli name, Roaring Lion. Hours after the President of the United States claimed that his country would stop attacking energy facilities for 5 days, Iran reported strikes against energy and gas infrastructure in the country. At the moment, no country has taken responsibility for the strikes. The Israeli Air Force struck military industry factories in Isfahan last night. And in the IDF, they say that alongside the damage to production sites, a systematic effort is also being made against the commanders of the missile array, against the background of a decline in the number of launches from Iran. This is a very complicated operation by the Israeli Air Force. If you're asking how I know, I'll explain. During the Air Force's nighttime operation, Iran tried to shoot down one of our Air Force planes. The hit was close. Stay with us. All the details are coming up. Here in Israel too, there were Iranian missile hits, and not light hits at all, but for the moment without casualties. Thank God for that. A missile with a 100-kilogram warhead hit a road on a small street in central Tel Aviv, and the result was severe. The 6th wave of Iranian launches since midnight led this morning around 7:30 a.m. to enormous destruction in at least 3 buildings and in nearby vehicles, following the direct hit of the missile. American intelligence estimates that Iran has placed naval mines in the Strait of Hormuz, a step that threatens the main shipping route. The report comes while Trump is promoting negotiations with Tehran, and in Iran, they're denying it completely. The Revolutionary Guards found replacements for the senior figures eliminated last week. In place of Ali Larijani, a Revolutionary Guardsman with the name of an Italian mafioso who was eliminated, today we will bring you all the information on Iran's new head of the National Security Council. His name is Mohammad Bagher Zulkadr, and apparently he is more extreme than his predecessor, if that's even possible. In Iran, they're trembling with fear of Israel and are afraid that Trump's declaration is a sophisticated trap, in their words. According to a report in the Wall Street Journal, in Tehran they fear that this ceasefire contacts are intended to deceive Iran, expose its senior officials to attack, and allow American and Israeli strikes to resume at a more convenient time. Now, the Gulf states finally understand that Iran is an existential threat to them. Bahrain is advancing in the Security Council a proposal to use force to defend shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, while Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, according to these reports, are hardening their positions towards Iran against the background of the escalation in the ceasefire efforts. Recently, Saudi Arabia agreed that the United States would use one of its air bases to strike Iran, and soon it may join the war. Reports coming out of the Gulf say it is only a matter of time. The United Arab Emirates as well, which repelled more than 2,000 attacks, is considering sending military forces and has frozen Iranian assets on its territory in order to damage Tehran's economy. The fear of both states is that Trump will declare the war over and leave them alone with Israel. And I'm happy to announce that the global domino effect has begun. Iran is shutting off the gas tap to Turkey, and Europe is entering a state of pressure. Iran has stopped exporting gas to Turkey after the Israeli strike on the South Pals field, and the tension is spilling over into the energy markets. Prices in Europe have surged sharply, increasing fears of global consequences. Today, we will also dive into the cyber war between Israel and Iran, because since the beginning of the war, it has moved up a stage. Databases of 50 Israeli companies have been erased by Iran since the war began. The head of the National Cyber Directorate exposed troubling data from Operation Roaring Lion, a rise of hundreds of percents in destructive data attacks, attempts to take over security cameras, and the targeting of the families of security personnel. And meanwhile, on the northern front against Hezbollah, the IDF announces an expansion of the maneuver in Lebanon. The Israeli government is expected to approve the call-up of 400,000 reserve soldiers. Against the background of the expansion of the military maneuver in Lebanon and the continuation of the war in Iran, the government is expected to approve a broad reserve mobilization. And it's important to mention that today we will also go into the humiliation of Iran's ambassador in Lebanon. Lebanon announced the cancellation of the credentials of Iran's ambassador and declared him persona non grata. In a step of severe protest over violation of norms, Beirut recalled its ambassador from Tehran. Meanwhile, Iranian sleeper cells around the world are beginning to wake up. Yesterday, the British Foreign Office summoned the ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the United Kingdom for a conversation following the indictment of two people suspected of assisting the intelligence service of a foreign state. Can you guess which one we're talking about, guys? There's a lot ahead of us, so let us dive into the details. I'm Mati Shoshani, and Yair Pinto, who's usually with me, is on vacation today. So as you can see, I'm presenting to you boots on the ground, the news report that brings you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel. Today is day 25 of the war against the Revolutionary Guard in Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And just a second before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible, and most importantly, don't forget to click the subscribe button. Now I want to open with Iran's strikes on Israel. Today I traveled with our team to southern Israel, to the city of Arad. It was the impact point of an Iranian missile in the middle of a residential neighborhood. A missile strike that truly ended in a miracle. And while I set out this morning, riding my motorcycle on the way, more reports were already arriving about additional strikes in Israel, and would be happy to share my day with you. So let me tell you what happened today. Today was interesting. I traveled down south, down Route 60, which was one of my favorite roads. Let me just fix something over here on the camera, just a second. Okay, guys, if you ever wonder if we're live or not, there's at least one technical issue every broadcast. So let me tell you the story of today. I went down south with our team to film in essentially an explosion zone of where an Iranian ballistic missile fell 3 days ago. This is Arad, a southern city. And I want to say this, I'll start with the conspiracy theories. There is no military base there. There is nothing nearby that could be a military target, even if such a legitimate target existed. All there is in Arad is people, families who live in small homes. This is not a very affluent city. These are small homes in crowded buildings, many of them built in the late 50s, early 60s in Israel. Again, not the best construction quality that we've ever had in this country. We visited that area, and I have to tell you, I arrived a little before our team who got stuck on the way with technical issues, and I was amazed by the level of destruction. And I want to tell you there's two things here. One, there's a slight miracle in the sense that the ballistic missile with a substantial warhead fell smack in between multiple buildings. I mean, within, let's say, 20 to 30 feet, 8 to 10 meters maybe, of any area of where the crater was, there is a building full of people who were in their homes at the time. Hear me again when I say this. 8 to 10 meters, maybe 30 feet max, of where this crater is, there were buildings. And I learned there, I interviewed a member of Zaka's team. Um, I learned there today a few things about how bombs actually work. I've seen several attack sites, several explosion sites. This was inside a dense urban area, and the bomb came in and just sucked the air out of that area. That's apparently what bombs do, big bombs, pulled the facade off the buildings with some of the people who were inside of them. Listen to me when I tell you this. The bomb came down, created a huge crater. It creates apparently something like a low pressure zone, sucks the facade off the buildings. Literally, the buildings just don't have anything aside from the concrete framework. That's what was left. And then there's an explosion that throws shrapnel in every direction. If this bomb went any way, 30 feet, any direction, we'd have dozens of casualties, dozens of killed Israeli civilians. Instead of that, we had over 100 lightly injured Israeli civilians, a couple that were more severely injured, and several miracles over there, including a 2-year-old who was sucked out of an apartment by this initial part of the explosion and landed on a balcony 2 stories below. Again, an amazing scene. I want to tell you something. You see these kind of things. There was a fall in Dimona, southern city. There was a fall in Arad, where I visited today. One thing becomes very, very apparent. The Iranians are going after our population. There's no strategic goal here. There's no, they want to destroy some military facility or anything like that. It's not about, what they used to claim, the hidden airplanes hidden inside apartment buildings in Tel Aviv, some of these farcical claims that they made in the past. They are after our civilians. They're after them 100%. That's it. And we saw this impact point. I wish we had the images on the screen. Hopefully we'll have them the next time we have the broadcast. Massive impact point, massive crater in the ground, and just debris everywhere. We're talking over 100 apartments that are going to be demolished. Multiple blocks of a city that are going to be completely demolished and torn apart. Thank you, Font, for running that footage behind us. Very substantial amount of damage. And today, while we were traveling to Arad, additional rockets that fell in central Tel Aviv. So again, guys, I want to say a few things. One, God is supernaturally protecting the people of Israel. I was driving in the car with my family the other day, and my kids asked, how is it that none of the bombs fall on a house? And I had to think about it and say, that's true. They always fall near the houses. There have been very few, if any, in this recent war that have actually struck these structures. They always hit next to them. And that has saved a lot of lives in Israel. There was one case in Bet Shemesh where it struck a bomb shelter, but thankfully only part of the people there that were severely killed or hurt. Quite a few of the people there survived, even though it was a direct impact of a very substantial ballistic missile. And I want to say one more thing is, this is the exception to the rule. Over 90%, I think it's 92 or 93% of all ballistic missiles launched at Israel are intercepted way outside and way before they ever land in the land of Israel. That's very important to say. And a few of them, very few, fall somewhere within the area of statistical error. And that's something we have to, I guess, live with. I mean, the situation simply can't be, it would have been completely different. Anyway, so that's what happened today in Tel Aviv. That's what happened today in Arad. And I want you guys to be aware, as we're going live here, of the need to pray for the people of Israel, the need to really stand with the people of Israel. Guys, I want to ask you to keep spreading the truth. I want to ask you to share the content. I want to ask you to look for me, Mati Shoshani, and for Yair Pinto on social media to see life in Israel under war through our eyes. I want to tell you something else. Israel is under attack right now. The sirens are sounding, missiles are falling, families are running to bomb shelters in the middle of the night, my family included. The world is watching the war unfold in the sky, but on the ground, another battle is happening quietly. A battle for food, a battle for dignity, a battle for survival. Because war doesn't only happen on the front lines, it reaches the kitchen table. Reservists have been called away from their jobs for months. Small businesses have collapsed. Elderly people are afraid to leave their homes during missile attacks. And for many Israelis, the fridge is simply empty. And at Meir Panim, we see it every single day. Holocaust survivors sitting alone in dark apartments, families of IDF soldiers trying to survive while a parent is fighting on the front lines. While the world watches the missiles, we're watching the people. And every day, Me'ir Panim, by the way, is a translation of may the Lord shine his face upon you. That's what that means, shine his face upon you. Provides hot meals, food packages, and care for those who need it most. But we can't do this alone. We need to ask you to stand with Israel, stand with the people who are suffering quietly, and go now to bless-israel.org. Again, that's bless-israel.org. Help feed the victims of this war. Donate now. Stand with Israel today. Okay, back to the news, guys. An Iranian missile with a warhead of about 100 kilograms struck a road on a small street in central Tel Aviv this morning. At least 3 buildings were damaged, cars caught fire, a large crater opened in the middle of the street, and at the same time, damage was also reported in at least 2 apartments in Rosh Ain. It was a direct hit, and the fact that it landed on the road and not on the building is what prevented a far worse scene this morning. The question now is not only how this happened, but why exactly now? When Washington is talking about negotiations and a delay in an American strike, Iran has chosen once again to prove that it still knows how to penetrate, to strike, and keep Israel's home front under pressure. This is day 25 of the Roaring Lion War, and by its American name, Epic Fury. And today's story begins exactly at that point of tension. Less than a day after Trump announced that he was delaying for 5 days the strike on Iran's power stations and energy infrastructure, claiming there had been very good talks with Tehran. Reports came in of strikes on energy and gas facilities in Isfahan and Hormuz. I hope I said that correctly. At the moment, no country has taken responsibility for those hits. In other words, officially, Trump put the brakes on an American strike against energy infrastructure. But on the ground in Iran, there were still explosions, damage, and strikes on sensitive facilities. That's exactly what makes these 5 days of grace look so suspicious to everyone. The Americans keep talking about an agreement. The Iranians deny it, and on the ground, there's still fire. Maybe pause and take a drink here, guys. So from here, we need to put the picture in order. Trump claims he sees a new Iranian seriousness. He speaks about agreements that there will be no nuclear weapon, about central points of agreement, and about an attempt to reach a broader deal. But in Iran, they're saying almost the opposite of that. They're claiming that all the talk about negotiations is psychological warfare, a movement to calm the energy markets, bring down oil prices, and buy time. In Tehran, they're also spreading another message. Their fear is that the negotiation itself is a trap, not only a diplomatic trap, but also an operational trap. They fear that more open talks would expose senior Iranian figures to precise attacks, and that temporary diplomatic cover would allow the United States and Israel to choose a more convenient time for the next round. And this is the point where we need to move from the table to the battlefield. Because while Trump talks about a delay, the American military doesn't look like a military easing off. On the contrary, actually. According to the reports, in the United States, a rapid deployment is being considered of a response force from the 82nd Airborne Division, a force capable of reaching any point in the world within 18 hours. This is together with a possible integration of thousands of Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. The scenario being examined now is just a show of force. It's the possibility of military action inside Iran itself, including the seizure of Kharg Island, the largest and most critical center of Iranian oil exports. Now, under that scenario, the Marines may arrive first, especially if rapid repair of runways and infrastructure is required. And then forces from the 82nd could reinforce and hold the ground. Now, guys, this isn't a drill. This is preparation for the option of a limited but highly dramatic ground move. To understand why Kharg Island is so important, you have to remember that it sits on Tehran's economic oxygen pipeline. If that island is taken out of the game or passes into American control, Iran doesn't just lose revenue. It also loses a deterrence lever, freedom of maritime action, and part of its ability to dictate to the world the pace of the energy crisis. Now, that is why the big question of the day isn't whether Trump wants a deal. He probably does. The question is whether he's using the deal to buy time before a larger military move, or is truly trying to stop the deterioration of the condition. At the moment, at least, all the facts on the ground show that he's keeping both options open. And in the middle of all of this, the Strait of Hormuz remains the heart of the campaign. In the last few minutes, dramatic reports have come in that American intelligence estimates Iran has placed naval mines in the strait. That's a very serious assessment because its meaning is clear. Not just a verbal threat against freedom of navigation, but real preparation to create a blockade or physical disruption of the world's most important oil route. If that's true, then while the White House is talking about talks, Iran is in practice mining the maritime arena through which about a fifth of the world's oil supply passes. This is no longer just a message. This is operational preparation. But in the face of that maritime threat, Tehran itself trembled last night. The Israeli Air Force completed a broad wave of strikes in Isfahan and other areas. According to the IDF, regime production sites were attacked in several parts of the country. And in the defense establishment, they make clear that the effort is currently working on two layers. The first layer strikes the production line, meaning the military industry factories, the sites, the components, and the infrastructure that produce missiles, parts, and systems. The second layer strikes the people themselves, the officers, commanders, operators, and key figures in the ballistic missile array. According to military officials, the link between these two layers is one of the explanations for the decline recorded in recent days in the number of launches from Iran. Here comes the technical part the audience needs to hear. In the IDF, they're talking about around 10 launches per day, sometimes a little less, around 7, sometimes more one day and less the other. Not zero, not total collapse, but also not the hundreds of launches that had been planned at the beginning of the war. Now, according to estimates, Iran still has more than 100 launchers in a range between 100 and 150. That means the capability is still alive, but it has been worn down, it has been shrunk, and is operating under a manhunt. When the defense establishment says that the systems that remain are still very dangerous, that should be taken literally. The Iranians are still trying to shoot down aircraft and refueling planes. In other words, the Air Force operation in Iran is not only distant and complex, it's being carried out inside an environment that is still trying to kill those operating in it. That is exactly what makes that nighttime strike so complicated. When the Iranian air defense and anti-aircraft missile network is still partly active, when there are still batteries, radars, and firing components capable of responding, every such deep sortie requires precise intelligence, exact timing, electronic warfare, and a refueling and security envelope. So when the senior IDF official says that the Iranians are always trying to shoot down aircraft and refueling planes, that is not a side comment. It is evidence that the air campaign still carries risk every single night. Now, in other words, the Air Force continues to strike, but it's not operating under sterile skies. It's operating over a wounded enemy, not a defeated one. And meanwhile, here in Israel, the Iranians succeeded this morning in creating a picture of a serious hit in the center of the country. The missile that struck Tel Aviv hit the road, not a building, but the blast caused enormous destruction. At least 3 buildings were damaged, dozens of residents were evacuated, cars were burned or turned into total losses, and 4 people suffered very light injuries from smoke inhalation. The district commander at the scene said this was a warhead on the order of 100 kilograms, or 200 pounds. In Rosh Ain, too, damage to apartments and an unexploded piece of ordnance were reported. It's important to say this precisely. There were no severe casualties, but this was not a light strike at all. And the image in Tel Aviv this morning was meant to serve that same constant Iranian message. Despite the damage to the launch array, Iran still has the ability to penetrate, to spread destruction, and create a sense of vulnerability in the heart of Israel. Within this axis, the Revolutionary Guards are also threatening to widen the fire. They announced that if Israel continues its crimes against civilians in Lebanon and Gaza, concentrations of IDF forces in northern Israel and in the Gaza Strip will be attacked with missiles and drones. This is a threat that must be read together with what's happening in Lebanon, because there, the IDF is not slowing down. On the contrary, During the night, a Radwan force headquarters set up inside a radio station in southern Lebanon was attacked. A Hezbollah intelligence headquarters was also struck, and the IDF continues to strike bridges, crossings, and infrastructure above the Litani that were used to transfer weapons, rockets, and launchers. The defense minister said that 5 bridges over the Litani were bombed and that the army will control the rest. At the same time, the government is expected to approve a broad mobilization of up to 400,000 reserve soldiers to allow flexibility in the face of the expansion in the Lebanese arena and the continuation of the war in Iran. Oh, let me center myself in the frame. Here we pause for a moment, because in the middle of all these events, it's also important to say something clearly to the viewers. If you want us to keep bringing you the full picture, not just the headline, but also what is behind it, this is the time to subscribe to this channel. Hit like, share this report, and write to us in the comments what you think. Is Trump buying time for an agreement or buying time for a larger move? Now we return to the track, because the political side of the war is already no less dramatic than the military side. In Tehran, they found a replacement today for Ali Larinjani, who was eliminated in an Israeli strike. His name is Mohammed Bagher Zulkadir. That is a mouthful, yes. Or in other reports, Mohammed Bagher Dua El-Qadir. Whatever the name actually is, he has been appointed secretly in Iran's Supreme National Security Council. This is not a technocrat. This is a retired general, one of the founders of the Revolutionary Guards, a man of the hard military establishment, someone who previously served as deputy commander of the organization, was involved in sensitive security arenas, and whose name over the years has been linked to repression, to terror, and a particularly rigid ideological line. This appointment is a message. The message is that the regime is not now choosing a soft or pragmatic figure, but a figure who strengthens a more militant and extreme line. At exactly the same time, Lebanon took a highly unusual step against Iran. Beirut canceled the credentials of the designated Iranian ambassador, declared him persona non grata, and demanded that he leave by March 29th. At the very same time, Lebanon recalled its own ambassador from Tehran for consultations. The official explanation was a violation of the norms of diplomatic relations between states. This is a very important detail, because it shows that the Iranian grip on Lebanon is no longer being accepted quietly, even within the official system in Beirut. In other words, Israeli and regional pressure on Hezbollah and on its Iranian patron is filtering into the diplomatic arena as well. The Gulf states also are hardening their line now. Bahrain is promoting in the Security Council a draft resolution allowing the use of all necessary means to defend shipping in and around the Strait of Hormuz. This draft relies on Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, meaning a framework that allows, at least in principle, not only condemnation or sanctions, but also the use of force. It's hard to know whether it will pass because Russia and China may block it, but the move itself matters. It shows that the Gulf states are no longer content with the messages and are trying to create international legitimacy for action. In the same breath, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates continue moving closer to more active steps. According to the reports, Saudi Arabia has already agreed that the United States may use an airbase on its territory. In the Emirates, economic measures are being tightened against Iranian institutions and assets. And in both states, there's the same fear that Trump will close the event too quickly, declare the war over, and leave them alone against a wounded, furious, and vengeful Iran. So from their point of view, the battle over Hormuz is no longer only a war between Israel and Iran, it's a battle over the entire regional balance of power. Now, alongside the political and maritime arena, it's also important to bring in the broader energy arena. Iran has stopped exporting gas to Turkey after the damage to the South Pals field, and the tension is spilling into the energy markets. This is an important line because it shows that the domino effect has already begun. It's not just oil, not just Hormuz, but also gas, also Turkey, and also pressure that is beginning to roll into the markets in Europe. Every delay, every blockade, every threat to export routes increases global anxiety. That's why Trump's statements about very good talks didn't emerge in a vacuum. They emerged under tremendous economic pressure. And another arena that doesn't always appear on the screen, but is operating nonstop, is the cyber arena. The head of the National Cyber Directorate revealed today that since the war began, 50 organizations and companies in Israel have suffered digital destruction, and their databases were completely erased. He spoke of a very sharp rise in destruction data attacks, of about 20 attack groups operated by Iran and Hezbollah, of attempts to seize security cameras, and of the targeting of families of security personnel. According to the data, in 18% of the reported incidents, there was a complete shutdown of the organization's activity. In other words, even if on the physical front there are moments of reduced launch intensity, in the digital space there is no pause at all. On the contrary, actually, there the Iranians are trying to create an image of victory, to sow fear and look for weak points in the civilian home front. And there are also signs that Iranian sleeper cells around the world are beginning to wake up, or at least are greatly alarming the West. In Britain, Iran's ambassador was summoned for a meeting at the Foreign Office following the indictment of two individuals suspected of assisting the intelligence services of a foreign state. The British message was sharp. The government takes threats from Iran and its proxies seriously, and it will take steps to protect the British people and expose Iranian operations aimed at undermining stability. This is not an internal British matter. It is another indication this war continues to expand beyond the Middle East. And within all of this, the diplomatic arena around the negotiations also continues to move. Qatar says it supports a diplomatic solution, but at the moment is not mediating between the sides. At the very same time, reports are surfacing about other mediation channels and about the possibility of a meeting in Pakistan. In the United States, they're speaking of hope for an agreement. In Israel, they say Trump is determined to reach a deal, but that it's unlikely Iran will agree to the American demands. This is the heart of the argument right now. Is it really possible to bring Iran to give up nuclear capability, enriched uranium, ballistic missiles, and proxies? Or is what the Americans present as a possible agreement in practice a surrender document that Iran will not accept? Let's summarize. Where do we stand going into the next coming days? The United States is talking about an agreement but building force. Iran is talking about a trap but continues to launch. Israel is striking deep inside Iran, continuing to wear down the missile array and expanding pressure in Lebanon as well. The Gulf is gradually moving from the language of caution to the language of response. And the whole world is once again looking at Hormuz, at Karg, and at the energy markets, asking whether these 5 days are a bridge to an agreement or only a countdown to the next round. This war has long since ceased to be only about missiles. It is now also a war about time, about perception, and about who will impose the ending first. If Trump's grace window closes without a deal, will the next move be renewed strikes on the energy sector or a direct leap into a military move on Hormuz and Karg? Write to me in your comments what you think. I've been Mati Shoshani. Look for me and Yair Pinto on social media to see the war without filters, straight through our eyes here in Israel. Hit like, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss boots on the ground again. Guys, as we end this broadcast, thank you for being with us through this live broadcast. And I want to ask you one last time, pray for the people of Israel. Pray for the peace of Israel. Pray for the peace of the soldiers and the protection of the soldiers of both Israel and the United States fighting in this area. And last but not least, pray for the people of Iran that they will know better days under a regime that is not the evil Ayatollah regime. If you don't currently live a life of active prayer, take one moment every day to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for God's will to be done. And one last thing, pray for our leaders. Pray for President Trump, for Prime Minister Netanyahu, who are imperfect individuals who are doing very important work right now in a very not simple situation. I've been Mati Shoshani, here live with Boots on the Ground in Israel. We'll see you all next time around.